The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of the Wellington estate as 10-year-old Smith clutched his mother's hand tighter than usual. His worn sneakers, held together with duct tape and hope, squeaked against the pristine white stone. He had never seen a house this big, not even in the movies his teacher sometimes played at school on rainy days. "Remember what I told you, Smith," his mother whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Mrs. Wellington is a very important woman. Be polite, say thank you, and don't touch anything." Smith nodded, though he didn't quite understand why they were here. His mother had been crying when the letter arrived 3 days ago, the expensive cream-colored envelope looking out of place among the bills and overdue notices that usually filled their rusty mailbox. She had read it over and over, her hands shaking, before finally telling Smith they had an appointment at the Wellington estate. The massive oak doors opened before they could knock, and a butler in a crisp uniform gestured them inside. Smith's eyes widened as they entered a foyer larger than their entire apartment. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, catching the light and scattering rainbow prisms across walls adorned with paintings that looked like they belonged in museums. "Mrs. Wellington will see you in the library," the butler said, his voice formal but not unkind. He noticed Smith staring at everything in wonder, and the corner of his mouth twitched upward, almost a smile. They followed him through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly, past rooms filled with furniture that gleamed and artwork that probably cost more than Smith's mother made in a year of cleaning houses. Finally, they reached a set of double doors carved with intricate designs. The butler knocked twice and pushed them open. The library took Smith's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall, filled with more books than he had ever seen in his life. Even the school library couldn't compare. Leather chairs sat arranged around a fireplace, and tall windows overlooked gardens that looked like something from a fairy tale. But it wasn't the books or the furniture that made Smith freeze in place. It was the woman standing by the window. Angela Wellington was perhaps in her late 50s, though she carried herself with a grace that made age seem irrelevant. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and she wore a simple but clearly expensive navy dress. But it was her eyes that struck Smith most. They were kind, deeply kind, and swimming with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "Sarah," Angela said softly, addressing Smith's mother, "thank you for coming, and this must be Smith." Smith's mother nodded, seeming unable to speak. Angela walked toward them, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, and knelt down so she was eye level with Smith. Up close, he could see she had been crying. Her eyes were slightly red, her mascara just barely smudged at the corners. "Hello, Smith," she said gently. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." "Hello, ma'am," Smith replied, remembering his manners despite his confusion. "You have a lot of books." Angela laughed, a sound that was both joyful and sad at the same time. "I do. Do you like to read?" "Yes, ma'am, but we don't have many books at home. Sometimes I read the ones at school over and over." Something flickered across Angela's face, pain mixed with determination. She stood and gestured toward the chairs. "Please, sit down, both of you. I imagine you have many questions." As they settled into chairs that were more comfortable than any furniture Smith had ever experienced, Angela moved to a side table and picked up a silver-framed photograph. She held it for a moment, her fingers tracing the frame's edge, before turning back to them. "Smith," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion clearly running through it, "I asked your mother to bring you here today because I owe you an explanation that's 20 years overdue." She walked over and handed him the photograph. Smith took it carefully, afraid he might break something so expensive-looking. But when he looked at the image, everything else fell away. It was his father. Smith would recognize that smile anywhere, even though he had only seen it in the 2 faded photographs his mother kept on their kitchen shelf. In this picture, his father looked young, maybe in his early 20s, standing in front of what looked like a small diner. He was laughing at something, his eyes crinkled with joy, and his arm thrown around the shoulder of someone just outside the frame. "That's my dad," Smith whispered, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. He looked up at Angela, then around the magnificent room. "But why? Why is my dad's photo in your house? You're rich," Angela finished gently, settling into the chair across from him. Yes, and your family has struggled. I know that, Smith. I've known that for a long time, and it's killed me. Smith's mother finally found her voice. Mrs. Wellington, you said in your letter that you would explain everything. Please, he deserves to know. Angela nodded, taking a deep breath. You're right. He does. She looked directly at Smith, her eyes holding his with an intensity that made him feel like this moment was somehow changing everything. Smith, that photograph was taken 22 years ago, in front of a small diner called Rosie's on the edge of town. I was 28 years old, and I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at her vast estate as she continued. I wasn't always wealthy, Smith. I grew up poor. Poorer than you might imagine. My father was a drunk who disappeared when I was 5. My mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep food on the table. By the time I was 17, I was working at Rosie's Diner, trying to save enough money to go to college, convinced that education was my only way out of poverty. Angela turned back to face them, and Smith saw tears beginning to form in her eyes. That's where I met your father, James Carson. He was 19, working construction during the day, and taking night classes at the community college. He would come into Rosie's every Tuesday and Thursday evening, order the cheapest thing on the menu, a cup of coffee and a slice of pie, and spread his textbooks across the table to study. A soft smile crossed her face at the memory. I thought he was the most determined person I had ever met. He was studying engineering, working himself to exhaustion, all while sending half his paycheck back to his sick mother in another state. We started talking. I would sit with him during my breaks and he would explain what he was learning. He made complicated things sound simple. He made the world seem full of possibilities. Smith's mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Angela continued, her voice growing softer. We fell in love. Not the dramatic, explosive kind you see in movies. It was gentle, built on late-night conversations and shared dreams. He told me about the bridges he wanted to build, the structures he wanted to design. I told him about my idea for a cleaning service that would eventually expand into property management. We made a pact, sitting in that diner at 2 a.m. after our shifts ended. We would both fight our way out of poverty. We would build our dreams together. And no matter what happened, we would never forget where we came from. Angela walked over to a desk and pulled out an old, worn napkin preserved in a clear frame. Even from across the room, Smith could see faded handwriting on it. We wrote our promises on this napkin, 2 kids with nothing but hope and determination, pledging to help each other succeed. What happened? Smith asked quietly. Angela's face crumpled slightly before she composed herself. Life happened. My mother got sick, really sick. Cancer. The bills were crushing us.
I was drowning in debt, dropping out of my own classes to work more hours. I was angry all the time, bitter, losing hope. And then one night, a man came into the diner. Richard Wellington. He was 20 years older than me, wealthy, established. He saw something in me. Ambition, maybe, or desperation. He offered me a way out. A marriage of convenience, he called it. He wanted a wife to help run his social life, manage his properties. In exchange, he would pay for my mother's treatment and give me the capital to start my business. She looked directly at Smith's mother. Your father begged me not to do it. He said we could find another way. He offered to quit school, to work more jobs, to help me. But I was 22 years old and terrified, and I made a choice I've regretted every single day since. I married Richard Wellington. The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Angela walked back to her chair and sat down heavily, as if the weight of her confession had physically exhausted her. James was heartbroken, but he was also incredibly kind about it. He told me he understood. He made me promise that I would still build my dream, that I wouldn't let my sacrifice be for nothing. The last time I saw him was the day before my wedding. We met at Rosie's one final time. He gave me that photograph and told me to keep it, to remember the pact we made, to remember that I was capable of amazing things. Then he hugged me and walked away. Angela wiped her eyes with a delicate handkerchief. Richard kept his promises. My mother got the best treatment available. She lived 5 more years, comfortable and pain-free. And he gave me the money to start Wellington Property Management. But here's what you need to understand, Smith. My success wasn't just because of Richard's money. It was because of what your father taught me. She leaned forward, her voice growing stronger. James taught me how to see the bones of a building, how to understand structure and potential. Those nights in the diner, when he explained his engineering coursework, he was teaching me how to look at properties and see not what they were, but what they could become. Every building I renovated, every property I developed, I did it using principles he taught me. He gave me the vision that built this empire. Smith looked down at the photograph in his hands, trying to process everything. But if you loved him and he helped you so much, why didn't you find him after Mr. Wellington died? Angela's face transformed with grief so profound that Smith instinctively reached out to touch her hand. Because I tried, Smith. Oh, God, I tried. Richard died 8 years ago. I was 47, wealthy beyond measure, and completely alone. The marriage had been exactly what Richard promised, a business arrangement. We respected each other, but there was no love. The day after his funeral, I hired the best private investigators in the country to find James. I was going to tell him everything. I was going to thank him. I was going to ask if maybe after all those years, there could still be something. She took a shuddering breath. It took them 3 months to track him down. They found him in a small town 2 states away. He had finished his engineering degree, worked for a modest construction company. He had married your mother, Sarah, a woman he met at the library. They had a son, you. By all accounts, he was happy. He had built a good life with what he had. Angela looked at Smith's mother with profound sadness. And then they told me the rest. James had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. He fought it for 2 years, draining every penny they had on treatments. He died 6 months before my investigators found him. He was 38 years old. Smith felt like he couldn't breathe. His mother was sobbing openly now. Angela continued, her voice breaking. I was too late. The man who had shaped my entire life, who had given me the tools to build an empire, had died struggling and in debt while I lived in luxury. It destroyed me. I fell into a depression that lasted over a year. Nothing I had accomplished meant anything anymore. But then, Angela said, looking directly at Smith with fierce intensity, I learned about you. My investigators told me James had a son, a smart, kind boy being raised by a mother who worked 3 jobs, just like my own mother had. And I realized I had been given a second chance, not to make things right. Nothing could do that, but to honor the pact James and I made on that napkin 22 years ago, to never forget where we came from, to lift each other up. She stood and walked to her desk, pulling out a folder thick with documents. For the last 7 years, Smith, I have been watching over you and your mother, anonymously. I paid off James's medical debts. I made sure your apartment building didn't evict you when you fell behind on rent. I created a scholarship fund at your school that, coincidentally, always seemed to cover your supplies and field trips. I bought the cleaning company your mother works for and gave all the employees raises and benefits. But I did it through shell corporations, so no one would know it was me. Smith's mother gasped. The raise last year? The health insurance? That was you? All of it, Angela confirmed. But anonymous charity wasn't enough. It never felt like enough, because James didn't just help me with money or information.
He believed in me. He saw potential in a bitter, scared waitress and convinced her she could be more. That's what I want to do for you, Smith. She opened the folder and pulled out several documents. I've set up a trust fund in your name. It will cover your education from now through university, any university you want to attend. Graduate school, too, if you choose. But that's not all. I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. I want to teach you about business the way your father taught me about structure and vision. I want to take you to libraries and fill your home with books. I want to give you opportunities that your father never had. Angela knelt down in front of Smith again, taking his small hands in hers. But more than anything, I want you to know who your father was. Not just the man in the photographs your mother keeps, but the brilliant, kind, selfless person who changed my life. James Carson could have been bitter when I married Richard. He could have walked away from me completely. But instead, he chose to be happy for me. He chose to believe that I would use my success to help others. And I want to prove he was right. Smith looked at his mother, who nodded through her tears, then back at Angela. Did you love him, my dad? With all my heart, she whispered. He was my first love, my best friend, and the person who made me believe I could be extraordinary. I've had his photograph on my desk for 22 years. Every decision I've made, every building I've developed, every person I've hired, I've thought about what James would say, whether he would be proud. He would be, Smith said quietly, surprising himself with his certainty. Mom always says Dad believed in seeing the good in people and helping when you can. That's what you're doing. Angela's composure finally broke, and she pulled Smith into a hug, crying openly. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for saying that. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. There's something else. Come with me. She led them out of the library and through the mansion, finally stopping at a door Smith hadn't noticed before. Angela opened it to reveal a room that made him gasp. It was a study, but not like any study he had ever imagined. One wall was entirely windows, overlooking the estate. Another wall held floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, already filled with books. There was a large desk with a brand-new computer, a comfortable reading chair, and most incredibly, a drafting table with engineering supplies. This is your room, Angela said softly. Whenever you want to come here to read, to study, to learn, I've filled the shelves with books on engineering, architecture, and design, your father's passions, but also fiction, adventure stories, everything a 10-year-old boy might love. And see that drafting table? James used one just like it when he was in school. I thought maybe you might want to learn to draw buildings like he did. Smith walked slowly around the room, touching the books with reverent fingers, staring at the drafting table in awe. This is all for me? All for you, Angela confirmed. And Smith, I want you to understand something important. This isn't charity. This is a promise I made to your father, even if he never knew it. When I hired those investigators to find him, I wasn't looking for redemption or forgiveness. I was looking for a chance to say thank you, to tell him that everything I built on the foundation he gave me. I can't tell him now, but I can tell you, and I can make sure that James Carson's son has every opportunity his father deserved but never got.
Smith's mother spoke up, her voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Wellington, this is too much. We can't possibly... Sarah, Angela interrupted gently, I've spent 8 years trying to figure out how to do this right. I didn't want to swoop in and overwhelm you. I didn't want to take over or make you feel indebted. But I also couldn't stand by and do nothing. James gave me the tools to build a fortune. The least I can do is give his son the tools to build whatever future he dreams of. She turned to face both of them. I'm not trying to replace James. No one could. And I'm not trying to take over as Smith's mother. You've done an incredible job raising him, Sarah, under circumstances that would have broken most people. But I would like to be part of his life. A mentor, a friend,
Someone who can share stories about his father that you never knew. Someone who can open doors and provide opportunities. If you'll allow it. Smith looked at his mother, saw the conflict in her face, pride warring with practicality, the desire to provide for her son clashing with years of independence. Finally, she nodded. James always said that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, she said, quietly. I think he would want this. I think he would want Smith to have the chances he never did. Angela smiled, relief and joy flooding her face. There's one more thing. She walked to a cabinet and pulled out a wooden box, worn and carefully preserved. My investigators found this among James's belongings. Your mother kept it, Sarah, but she told my people I should have it. I've been waiting for the right time to share it. She opened the box to reveal a stack of letters, yellowed with age, tied together with string. These are letters James wrote but never sent. To me. Over the years. He wrote them whenever something important happened in his life. When he graduated from college. When he got married. When you were born, Smith. When he got sick. He never mailed them, but he wrote them anyway. Angela's hands trembled as she held the letters. His last letter was written 3 weeks before he died. Your mother found it on his bedside table. Would you like me to read it? Smith nodded, unable to speak. Angela carefully untied the string and pulled out the last letter. The paper was thin, the handwriting shaky, but readable. She began. Dear Angela, I suppose this is goodbye. The doctors say I have weeks, maybe days. I should be angry or bitter, but mostly I just feel grateful. Grateful for the years I had with Sarah, the woman I loved. Grateful for my son, Smith, who is everything good I could have hoped to pass on to the world. And grateful for you, Angela, even though I haven't seen you in 16 years. Angela's voice broke, but she continued. I heard you married well. I heard Wellington Property Management became one of the most successful companies in the state. I always knew you would do something extraordinary. Remember that scared girl in Rosie's diner who thought the world was too hard, too unfair? I knew even then that she was wrong. The world wasn't too hard for you. You just needed to believe in yourself as much as I believed in you. I want you to know that I never regretted knowing you, Angela. Not for a single moment. You taught me that love doesn't always mean forever together. Sometimes love means wanting the best for someone, even if that best doesn't include you. You chose security and opportunity over uncertainty and struggle. You made the smart choice, and I was proud of you for it. I'm writing this letter because I need you to know something important. The time we spent together, those late nights in the diner talking about dreams and possibilities, those were the moments that taught me how to hope. You didn't just take from our relationship, Angela. You gave too. You showed me that ambition wasn't selfish, that wanting more from life was okay. You validated my dreams when no one else took them seriously. If somehow you're reading this, if somehow you ever think of that kid with the engineering textbooks and wonder if he remembered you, the answer is yes, every day. With gratitude, with fondness, with hope that you built something amazing. I have one request. If you ever learn about Smith, look out for him. Not because you owe me anything, you don't. But because I know you understand what it's like to be a kid with dreams and no resources. Teach him what I taught you, that limitations are just problems waiting to be solved with enough determination and creativity. And tell him that his father loved him more than anything in the world. Be extraordinary, Angela. You always were. Love, James. The room was silent, except for the sound of crying. Angela carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the box, then held the box out to Smith. This belongs to you now, all of it. His words, his thoughts, his love. Smith took the box with trembling hands. He knew! He knew you would find us! Your father was a smart man, Angela said softly. He understood people. He knew that eventually I would look for him, and he wanted to make sure that when I did, I would know that everything turned out okay, that he had a good life, a wife he loved, a son he adored. He wanted me to forgive myself. She looked out the window at her vast estate, at the empire she had built. For 8 years, I've been trying to do that. To forgive myself for choosing money over love, for being too late to thank him, for letting him struggle while I prospered. These letters have helped. Knowing that he didn't die bitter or angry, knowing that he wanted me to succeed. And now, being able to honor him by helping you, that's helping too. She turned back to Smith with fierce determination in her eyes. So, here's what happens next. You come here whenever you want. We fill that room with your drawings and ideas. I teach you about business and property and architecture. You tell me about your dreams and we figure out together how to make them real. Not because I'm trying to buy forgiveness or ease my conscience, but because your father and I made a pact 22 years ago to lift each other up and never forget where we came from. He kept his part. Now it's my turn to keep mine. Smith stood, walked over to Angela and hugged her. Dad would like you, he said simply. Mom says he always saw the good in people. I think he saw the good in you even when you couldn't see it yourself. Angela held him tight, this boy who looked so much like the young man she had loved a lifetime ago. Your father saw potential everywhere, in buildings that others wanted to tear down, in people others had given up on, in a scared waitress who thought she wasn't smart enough or brave enough to be successful. He was wrong about very few things, but he was right about the things that mattered most. Over the next hour, they talked. Angela shared stories about James that Smith had never heard, about his infectious optimism, his terrible jokes, his habit of sketching buildings on napkins while explaining how to make them better. Sarah shared memories from their marriage, about James teaching Smith to count using building blocks, about his insistence on reading to Smith every night, even when he was exhausted from work and treatments. By the time they prepared to leave, it felt like something fundamental had shifted. Smith wasn't just a poor boy visiting a mansion. He was James Carson's son, being welcomed into a legacy he hadn't known existed. A legacy of kindness, determination, and the kind of love that transcended time and circumstance. As they walked to the door, Angela stopped them. Wait, there's one more thing. She disappeared for a moment and returned with a small wooden box, different from the one containing the letters. James left this for Smith in his will, but there was no money to ship it. Your mother kept it safe, but I think it should be open now, together. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face again. Angela handed the box to Smith, who carefully lifted the lid. Inside was a worn leather journal, a set of drafting pencils, and a folded piece of paper. Smith unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. It was a drawing, a beautiful, detailed architectural sketch of a building, not a mansion or skyscraper, but something else. A community center with a library, classrooms, and spaces for families. At the bottom, in his father's handwriting, were the words, "For Smith, when you're old enough to build it. A place where kids like us can dream. Love, Dad." Smith stared at the drawing, his father's final gift, his father's final dream. He looked up at Angela, then at his mother, and made a decision with the certainty that only a 10-year-old who has just discovered his purpose can possess.
"I'm going to build it," he said firmly. "Maybe not now, but someday. I'm going to learn everything I need to know, and I'm going to build this exactly the way Dad drew it. A place where kids can dream." Angela knelt down beside him, looking at the drawing with wonder. "Then that's what we'll do. Together. Your father gave me the vision to build an empire. Now we'll use that empire to build his dream. What do you say, Smith? Partners?" She held out her hand. Smith looked at it, thinking about the pact his father and Angela had made on a napkin in a diner 22 years ago, about promises kept and dreams deferred, about love that transcends mistakes and time. He reached out and shook her hand. "Partners," he agreed. As they finally left the Wellington estate that afternoon, Smith carried his father's journal and drawings carefully. The letters would stay in his new study waiting for him to return. The trust fund would provide education and opportunity. But most importantly, he now carried something else. The knowledge that his father had touched lives in ways he never knew, had built legacies that extended far beyond his 38 years. Angela stood at the window of the library, watching them drive away, the photograph of young James Carson still in her hand. For the first time in 8 years, the guilt that had consumed her began to lift, replaced by something lighter.
purpose, hope, the sense that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to honor the boy she had loved and the pact they had made. She looked down at the photograph, at James's bright smile and hopeful eyes. "I found him," she whispered. "Your son. He's remarkable, James, just like you. And I promise I'll make sure he has every chance to build that dream of yours. We'll do it together, the three of us, you, me, and Smith, the way we always should have." Outside, in the car, driving home, Smith opened his father's journal and found an inscription on the first page. "For my son, remember, buildings start with a foundation, but dreams start with belief. Believe in yourself the way I believe in you. Love always, Dad." Smith pressed his journal to his chest and looked out the window at the world passing by. It looked different now, full of possibility and potential, full of buildings waiting to be designed and dreams waiting to be built. He thought about the pact his father and Angela had made, about lifting each other up and never forgetting where you came from. And sitting in that car, a 10-year-old boy with worn sneakers and a heart full of newfound purpose made his own pact. He would learn, he would grow, he would build his father's dream. And someday he would help other kids just like him believe that their circumstances didn't define their destinations. The photograph of James Carson would remain on Angela Wellington's desk for the rest of her life, a daily reminder of the young man who saw potential in a scared waitress and taught her that limitations were just problems waiting to be solved. Next to it, she would eventually place a new photograph, one of Smith on the day he broke ground on the James Carson Community Center, built on land Angela donated, funded by the foundation they created together, designed by Smith himself after graduating from the best engineering program in the country. But all of that was still years away. On this day, in this moment, a poor boy asked a billionaire woman a simple question that changed everything. Not just for him, but for both of them. Because sometimes the greatest gifts we give aren't the ones wrapped in silver paper. Sometimes they're the legacies we honor, the promises we keep, and the dreams we help others build. And sometimes love that seems lost isn't really gone at all. It's just waiting for the right moment to come full circle, transformed into something even more beautiful than it was before. A foundation strong enough to support not just buildings, but futures. Not just dreams, but destinies. The pact made on a napkin 22 years ago had been kept after all, just not in the way anyone expected. And that, perhaps, was exactly as James Carson would have wanted it.
Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love, loss, legacy, and redemption. Stories like Smith and Angela's remind us that our actions matter. Our kindness echoes through time, and it's never too late to honor the people who shaped us. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Parent Tales for more inspiring stories that will move you, teach you, and remind you of what truly matters in life. Like this video if Angela and Smith's story resonated with you. Comment below and tell us, what legacy do you want to leave for the next generation? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today, a struggling parent, a teacher who invests in children, or anyone who has ever wondered if their small acts of kindness truly matter. Tell us where you're watching from. We love connecting with our Parent Tales family around the world. Remember, every subscription, like, and share helps us continue bringing you stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all of the goodness in humanity. Until our next story, keep believing in the power of kindness, keep honoring those who helped you rise, and keep creating legacies worth remembering. Bye!